Matthew, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Matthew, your art is deeply rooted in fostering dialogue and connection. After you created Subway Therapy in 2016, it became a global sensation and it was awarded the MAS Brendan Gill Prize and the Demos Transforming America Award. What was your inspiration for this project, and how do you see joy existing in spaces of vulnerability and openness?
Let's see. I guess I can tell you a story about where this work kind of all started. It's 2015. I'm in Indonesia and I'm riding on a motorbike and I just beef it and fall and hurt my foot. So I go to a hospital and then I was living in Korea at the time. So I went back to the hospital that I knew in Korea and I ended up spending 3 weeks there. And I thought a lot about how people feel better about the things they feel bad about, because even though I was in this really not great situation in a foreign country with people that I couldn't necessarily communicate well to, I was taken care of. I had people checking on me. There was this like random Wi-Fi network that I could log into. So I had the ability to watch shows and talk to my family. And I just thought a lot about how people deal with crisis or how people experience the worst parts of their experience being, or, just walking around and being a person. And that really got me thinking about how I can help people feel better about the things that they feel bad about. So I got to New York in 2016 and I started thinking about that. And my guiding question became, how do I help people feel better about the things they feel bad about? And I started going out to set up a table with two chairs just to talk to people. And I had this sign. For some reason, I had the idea that secrets were a big deal that people hold inside and it affects them. But, if they share that weight with me, it wouldn't be as heavy for me, because most often when we hear secrets, it's not like they weigh on us, but we can help share the weight. So I just went into the New York subway and started listening to people's secrets. I had this sign that said secret keeper and talk to people. That was really I thought it would work. And I think sometimes, you're creative, you think you have this idea that something's going to work. And then when you try it and it does, it really inspires the future action and more iteration. And so I kept doing the work and people kept saying, this is great. So I just kept doing more and more things. And eventually that turned into Subway Therapy and all the works that I work on now.
What are, from your point of view, the key ingredients to create spaces where people feel safe to express themselves and to share those secrets, as you were saying?
I think that everybody has the capacity to hold space for other people. And whether it's something that they've done because they've gone to school to learn how to be a social worker, or whether they've done some sort of, or just it's been modeled to them by their family, I think everybody has that capacity to hold space. So for me, when I was starting to do this work, I didn't even think about it, like whether I was capable of it or whether it was going to be good or not, because in my experience, I'd done a lot of different space holding in liminal spaces or spaces of transition. So I did freshman orientation and I was even in crisis mitigation as a middle schooler. There was a program for it. And so, yeah, I think the simplest form would be just set up a table, talk to strangers outside of your house. And there are lots of examples of this. There are like news articles, you can find them. And there's like a man in Kansas, I think, that would just set up on his stoop outside of his house and talk to people walking by, and he had a little sign. I think that sign is an incredibly important invitation so that people know that something is happening. Yeah, as far as tools that go into doing the work, it's really just an openness of spirit, showing up for people who are around, and just kind of following the path that unfolds in front of you. Because in my experience, when I've done these works, it's very obvious. It's like destiny just shows up in front of you, and you can either walk down that path or you can try and not. But it's very obvious when it shows up.
What have been some of the most surprising things that you have learned from the Subway Therapy projects that you've been setting up in different locations?
I did an interview with my best friend about like different things that I'd learned on this, and they asked him that question. He was like, I think he's a much better listener now. I didn't know that I would grow to be the listener that I am now. And the way that I learned how to hold space was very surprising. It's not so different to what I used to do. And I've been doing this for about 8 years now, different projects of setting up in public space and having people show up. And when I first started, one of the most surprising experiences that I had was to do with my own way of interacting with other people and my own bias. I had this experience with a guy that sat down with me. He sits down. He's got this kind of like a arm brace on his arm, and he had a security jacket on, but it was kind of torn, and I didn't know if he was a security guard or someone who was unhoused. And he was probably in his mid 30s. He was a black man. He wasn't like, it's not like his hair was like dirty or messy or anything like that. I just couldn't get a read on like whether this is someone who is safe to sit across from, because he looked super nervous. He kept looking around like something was about to happen near us, or like it was just really strange, and it made me feel really unnerved. And so I pushed through it and I said, "What's up? What do you have on your mind?" He goes, "I keep telling people this idea. I have this idea, but people keep telling me that it's a really bad idea and that I shouldn't do it. But I think that I should do it." And it just, the way he was talking about the idea and the way he kept looking around, and it read to me like something weird was about to happen, or he was going to say something really odd. And I kept just showing up, even though I had like these little bells ringing in my head that I should be, taking care of my own safety in that moment. And we kind of get to this point where he's like, "Yeah, I don't know if I should tell you because, everyone always says that they don't, that I shouldn't do it." And I was like, "You know what? I'm here to listen. Lay it on me. What's on your mind?" And he goes, "I really want to go on the set of ghost shows and see if they're real or not." I was like, "What? That's what you wanted to say?" And it was such a good example of me trying to figure out like what he was up to. It could have been because we were from different walks of life, or we looked different. And it was just so funny to hear the final result of that. He was just nervous talking to a stranger. He just had this wild idea that his friends told him was really dumb. And once he said it, I was like, "Dude, I don't know if anybody's going to say yes to you doing that. Like, I don't know what ghost show is going to say, yeah, you can come on our set and like film us and see if we're lying or not." But, we just had, from then on, we kind of had this cool like 20-minute conversation about the logistics of production and like whether someone would actually let him on. And he was asking for advice. And I was like, just send some emails. You can Google the information of shows, and you can look up producers on the shows and stuff like that. I was like, just send some emails, because if they say no, then there's that. But if you don't try, then you'll never know if they would have said yes or not. And so it was just a really fun conversation. And from that point on, it really broke apart the ideas that I had about showing up for people. And it's obvious when you're in an unsafe environment. And I've had those experiences being out in the subway. But I think allowing people to really surprise you is a wonderful thing. And when you really open yourself up to just hear what people have to say, and you just don't worry about what they're going to say or how, and you show up for them, I think that can lead to a lot of really surprising things.
Thank you for sharing that story. I want to go back now to the listening component. And I know in 2021, you designed a social good project incubator for the door, which led to the co-founding of the Listening Lab. Can you share more details about the vision that shaped the creation of the Listening Lab, please?
Yeah, you bet. So for anybody that is unfamiliar with Listening Lab, we are an organization that's really interested in fostering social cohesion through the practice of listening as a practice. And I would encourage people to really pick up a practice if they don't have one, whether that's a physical practice like martial arts or working out, or if it's a creative practice like morning pages or just doodling with free time, or a social practice, which I think this is where you practice doing something like listening to strangers or listening to people around you. So we developed Listening Lab in a social good project incubator that was in partnership with The Door. I had been doing some projects with them, and I had met Dina Ismail, who is someone that developed the youth leadership program there. And I knew that I wanted to share what I loved about the work that I do and the ramp towards success that I took to learn all the things that I know with young people that might be interested in that work too. So I called Dina and said, hey, do you want to try this thing? It was 2020. So we knew that COVID was still an issue, but we also wanted to start the work. And so we thought it would be cool to develop a project that could fold in some members of The Door and some professionals to try and address some of the issues that we were facing at that moment. Isolation and social division on the rise. I mean, post-COVID world was really challenging, and a lot of people hadn't adjusted to starting to be out again or having conversations with people. And so we wanted to look at all these different areas of challenge and think, how can we create a project that addresses some of these issues? So in early 2021, there are 5 members of The Door who were all young New Yorkers. And Dina, myself, and a handful of other people who helped get it started, who were all professionals in various arenas that helped to develop specific areas in filmmaking, in storytelling, in philosophy of place, in team dynamics and social work. And so we created this 6-week program that went later on. We ended up taking that as a pilot and have done it every year since. So for 3 years, we've had this 6-week learning and doing program. But the first one was really the incubator for the project. And so we decided to set up a table with 2 chairs, go out into public space and just talk to strangers. And the question that we landed on, in particular after a workshop with Mindy Foley-Love, an incredible researcher on the psychology of place, we landed on, since March 2020, how has your life changed? So for the whole year in 2021, we asked, since March 2020, how has your life changed? And people really poured their stories out. And it was an amazing experience for everyone involved. The 8 of us, including Sarah Howard, who had a production studio that really informed some of our storytelling work. We were out for almost a whole year just listening to people's stories and thinking about how to share those stories, which we decided to do at a exhibition in partnership with the Whitney. So we had a pop-up at the Whitney Museum of American Art here in New York, and a few other showcases at smaller community spaces. And yeah, that's how we got started and how Listening Lab came to be. And today we're an official 501c3. Unfortunately, the issues that we set out to address are as present and powerful as they have ever been. So we're really curious to see how in the next 2 years we can address issues like division in America and the immigrant experience, hearing about people's stories and helping people understand each other. Because at the moment, there are so many stories that don't serve people about how someone else is, or about how we need to be safe from certain groups, or that, there are so many different narratives that are playing into extremism in America and into social isolation and other topics in the US. And so we just want to be doing that work to combat those challenges.
I was curious if you could help us understand how you measure success of the Listening Labs programs when it comes to fostering cohesion and meaningful dialogue within communities.
Yeah. Something that I love, my dad and I and my brother and my grandpa and our whole family too, but in particular my dad and I, we would go fishing a lot. And he used to say that it's not about catching fish, it's just about being on the boat. And I think that when I look at measures of success for Listening Lab, just having someone sit in a public space and be open to conversation does something to people walking by that are looking at that. They know that there is someone who's listening. And at the very lowest level for success, just having people, and this is proven in lots of different studies about grandmas sitting on street corners in dangerous neighborhoods and people just being out on the street, being a part of the community. When people are out in their communities, they serve that community just by being outside and by being a presence of good in that community. So at the very smallest level, we are successful by just being out, and people smile as they walk by. They say hi. They don't sit down and have a conversation because they don't want to be recorded. But just those small, tiny little smiles and brushes contribute to the fabric of society. And then on top of that, when we have conversations with people, those conversations are incredibly valuable and meaningful. And so in one 4-hour session, we might have 8 conversations. And that's because people sit down for 15 to 30 minutes when they have conversations with us. So those 8 people walk away having been listened to and heard, and they share that with other people. They share that when they go home. They share that when they interact with people who are frustrated, who have frustrated them at work. There are all these different kind of resounding impacts that we see through these conversations. And there are people who reach out to us after and say, hey, thank you for doing that. I just needed to have someone hear me. I just needed to let something off my chest, and I appreciate you giving me that opportunity. I've heard something like that for the 8 years that I've done this work. And so the second level of impact and success comes from people texting us and saying, wow, thank you for that. And I know that direct connection creates what would be called a weak tie. In the social psychology, there's weak ties and strong ties. Strong ties are ties that you have with your family or with your close friends. But weak ties are the incredibly important ties and bonds between you and your grocer, or you and the mail person that you see sometimes, with you and just a stranger that you happen to bump into who your papers fall out of your briefcase, and then you're picking them up together and you have a brief conversation. That's a really old example, I guess, because people aren't doing briefcases anymore, but you kind of get the point, right? So that's the level 2, is creating weak ties within the community, and that's successful. And then above that, when we share out our programs, when people see it, when people like something, we're really interested in sharing out content and media that doesn't exaggerate what the human experience is like, that doesn't create what I would call emotional inflation, where you see something and you want to see it in the world, but it doesn't really exist because it's fabricated for Instagram. We don't do that. We publish media of just people having the conversations that they're having, and those conversations are very interesting. So you can have interesting media without it being fabricated in our book. And the last level of success comes from, and maybe this is one of the strongest in our program, comes from the lasting relationships that we have with members that are part of our 6-week learning and doing program. We work with youth in New York, in particular non-white youth who are struggling in some way. And so we want them to have the greatest opportunities for success and for thriving in New York and in other places too. And it's very common to have disenfranchised groups and individuals doing some of the worst jobs. And when I say worst, I don't mean like people's conceptualization of like cleaning or things like that. I mean, they're just doing jobs that are boring and not growing skills. And when I think about the way that I used to be a barista in San Jose, California, I had lots of conversations with people. And even at that shop, as it got busier, I had less and less conversations, and it was more transactional. And I think there are a lot of young people in New York and in many other places that are just doing transactional jobs. They're just like passing items from one place to another, whether it's at a retail store or whether it's at a coffee shop, or making salads or something like that. And they're just passing the item from the work that they're doing to make it to the person that is getting it. And there's no exchange. There's no conversation. And I think if there was an exchange, if there was a conversation, I would think that those are really meaningful, wonderful jobs. Because there isn't, I just want to provide better jobs for people. So like, why not offer jobs for people to sit out and have conversations with strangers? And why not pay someone to go through a learning program where they can develop their social skills, where they can develop their ability to talk to strangers, where they can develop their ability for confidence and autonomy in the job market, as well as really hard skills like production, audio engineering, and exhibition design and curation, storytelling. So that last layer of success for us just comes from seeing the young people that we work with go on to get paid to do really interesting and meaningful work in storytelling, in journalism, in production. So that's been a really wonderful experience. I know it's a very long answer, but there are just so many fruitful ways that we see success through our program. This
Matthew, that was so beautiful. Really love the positive impact that you're bringing to the youth and the community. I imagine this must be a very fulfilling part of what you do. Would you care to elaborate a little bit more about your own personal purpose that
mm,
brings you joy?
you know this is funny. I've been thinking about this lately, and I really have found a lot of joy in paying for things lately. This sounds so strange, but I love paying people to do great work. I was working on a production on Saturday and I needed a live stream switcher, and I paid one of the young New Yorkers that I mentioned earlier that I've developed a relationship with. And I just find that so great. Like, I wonder about how other people think about paying it forward. And I feel like for some reason, money is somehow extracted from that equation in a lot of people's minds, that it doesn't bring them joy to pay for an employee. But to me, when I pay a freelancer to do great, meaningful work and I'm on my app zelling someone a payment, I that feeling is good. Maybe people don't have that feeling because they know that they're giving someone bad work to do for the money that they're sending them, or they wish they could spend less, or they're affected by like greed gripping their heart, and so they can't feel good about paying for an item. And certainly there are a lot of people that struggle in our current financial system, and so I understand that people can't always feel good about buying a product or paying for a service that is expensive. So, some people find no joy in paying, like I'm saying. But for me, I just think it's wonderful. I obviously like getting paid for doing meaningful work, and then passing that to someone who does a great job with me is such a joyful thing for me. I also find a lot of joy in working with my collaborators and having conversations about the work and partnerships that we make with people. There's so much joy in just talking about how to solve some of these problems. Certainly, talking about challenging issues is difficult. It can be really, really not fun. And especially for issues like what's going on in Gaza right now, or what's going on in Lebanon, and the bombs dropping in Israel. I mean, if you look at an issue like that, you think, okay, this just sucks on so many levels. It's awful. And it's difficult to find joy in a conversation about something like that. But I think that there is something wonderful about being around people that are interested in solving some of the more complex problems that we have. Because if we don't try it all, then what we have is desperation. And I think that there's a way to create hope and to find joy in those moments, because it's not like if I think about disenfranchised individuals in New York, and I think about the unhoused, which we interact with often in New York, and if I am so affected by their experience and thinking about that challenge that I take on a like sad demeanor, or if I'm afraid. And I think it's important for someone who is unhoused to be able to sit down and have a great conversation with someone that is full of joy and that is full of promise and that is full of hope, so that they can move forward in a way that's helpful for them, instead of feeling like they're this other community and not worthy of a joyful conversation.
If there would actually be a recipe for joy, particularly given all the insights and conversations that you've had over the many
Mm.
years, what would be the three main ingredients that it could contain?
Curiosity would be my number one, for sure. I think that if people are curious, they can find things they would not normally find. So curiosity, for sure, I would say, is number one. I think imagination is another one that comes to mind in this moment. I think that if you're curious and imaginative, you can end up finding joy in so many situations. And the imagination part, whether it's in thinking about how we're going to solve division in America, or how to solve issues with unhoused individuals in New York. If you can't imagine a world where that problem is solved, you're going to have a really hard time solving it. And so I think in our civic imagination, we really need to work towards how to be better citizens, how to be better neighbors, how to be better friends. And I think that that imagination piece is incredibly important to the joy that one can find when they're in a conversation, because you have to be able to shape narrative in your own mind to feel good in a world where there are many, many, many bad stories. So that's something that I would highly encourage people to think about in their interactions with people and in their lives. And let's see, what would be a fun last one? I think play. So if you're curious and playful and imaginative, I think that's a great recipe for joy. So I love play. When I started doing subway therapy, to kind of like package it all up for anybody that's curious, I started doing this project subway therapy, and eventually it turned into 50,000 sticky notes in the New York subway, and I still do sticky note installations all the time. But let's say to get to that point where 50,000 people were writing on sticky notes in the subway, and it was like this beautiful mosaic of human expression, and people just loved it, and they were hugging nearby, and people would create their own art pieces as that were kind of inspired by it. To get there, I was thinking about how people feel better about the stuff they feel bad about. Like, what are ways that people can feel good about bad stuff? Like, that's what I was thinking about. It wasn't a happy topic, but I was really curious. And then I used my imagination and I go, okay, how do people do that? Well, I can set up a sign that says secret keeper. Okay, so I do that. I'm having this conversation with this one woman, and she goes, I don't have like a secret, but can I just complain for a bit? And I was like, yeah, sure, go for it. She goes, I hate my boyfriend's ex-wife, and I hate my boyfriend's best friend because it's this woman and they slept together once. She makes me feel so jealous. I know that I shouldn't, but like, it drives me crazy. And she like looked at me. I could have taken like a whatever approach to it, but she's looked at me expectantly, and I was like, yeah, I hate him too. I was playful, and then we dove into that conversation, and obviously I was joking. I don't hate them, but through that play, we had this great conversation. And at the end, she says, man, this is great. This is like therapy. And I was like, that's funny. I should wear a suit. And then a week later, I started wearing a suit. I went to a thrift store and I bought this brown suit. So basically, I listened and I was curious, and I followed this path that came before me, and I bought this goofy brown suit. It was so dumpy. And I went to the dollar store and I got a certificate of achievement and some wall art. And then next time I went out, I changed my sign from secret keeper to subway therapy. And I think that type of exploration, that like combination of play and curiosity and imagination, is really how you can make great work as an artist, but it's also how you can be a great neighbor, and it's how you can be a great friend. And I think those three things would be my number one for creating joy for other people.
Given the extent of your experiences until now, if you could go back and give one piece of advice to your younger self when you're just starting your journey, what would it be?
It's interesting. I feel like I'm in such a good place in my life, and so it's hard to want to change any particular thing. But it would be interesting. So the subway therapy project that I did so well that I got a book deal, and that was completely life changing. And I didn't really know how to receive all the success that came to me. There was so much all at once, and navigating that, I had a great network of people that helped me navigate that. I got an email from a group, and the email was something like, we love your work. We are an all woman led design agency. We do web design. We do all this stuff. We love your project. We really want to help you build a website that is great for this. And I remember thinking in that moment, this is awesome. I definitely want to do this and partner with this group. And I just couldn't find their email. And it was, I didn't even really try and look until a month later. And I had like this whole inbox full of emails. And I just, to this day, every once in a while, I'll look for this email because I would love to work with this group. I want to know who they are. And so I feel like at that moment, even though I didn't have any money, I would have told myself to find someone that could help support me, that would grow into a role within a group. I really had no ability to direct or to delegate responsibility at that time. I was super lucky that my best friend, Adam Shore, he's just a wonder, and my other roommate, Dominic Pody, they were amazing lawyers in New York. And in the days that I was getting hundreds of emails from press outlets and other people, they took on the email responsibility and just were responding to emails for me as a volunteer. And I really needed someone that could do something like that for me, that I was also interested in the work. And I could have developed with someone or even a group of people at that time, which is what I know now. But yeah, I would have told myself to find a team that really wanted to work on it with me instead of trying to do everything myself. That's what I would have told myself at that time. And I think I would have received more opportunity. I would have been able to really take advantage of a lot of the connections that I made. I've got like a box of 300 business cards over, years and years and years of just people who said, I want to work with you. I want to give you money. I want to do all these things. And I was like, great, great, great. And then I just like tossed their card in this box and never got back to them. So it would have been nice to work with a team that was interested in development with me.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be and how would you use it to infuse
Um,
more joy in this world?
if I had a superpower, I think I would probably want people to, it's interesting. I think one of the biggest issues that we have as a world is a lack of understanding. Like we really can't understand each other, or we can't, we're stuck in ourselves and our own experience. And it's really hard to break out of that. And so I would like to have a superpower that allows people to understand each other. Now, it sounds kind of silly. And to be honest, the work that I do feels like it's that superpower. We teach people to go out and talk to strangers and have meaningful conversations. But I think if people can have meaningful conversations and be really impacted by them and changed by them, then we can move towards fixing a lot of the issues that we have. And so that superpower for me would be to have tools of understanding, to give people this like ability to really connect and understand, so that we can create more opportunities for joy, so we can create more opportunities for being together and having peace in the world. At the end of the day, everyone wants to feel good and everyone wants to feel safe and everyone wants to have fun and play and be joyful. And so I wish that I could have that superpower that would amplify those feelings and get rid of all of the bad feelings, all the like strife and fear and distrust and greed. If I could just wipe all of the greediness out of the world, I would do it right now.
Amazing. Matthew, how can people discover more your work?
The best way to look up Listening Lab is to go to listeninglab.myc. That's our website. And then our Instagram is the same, at listeninglab.myc. If anyone wants to get in touch with me personally, you can go to mattchavez.com. That's MATTCHAVEZ. So be in touch. We'd love to work together towards a more connected world.
Amazing. Thank you so much for everything you have shared, Matthew. I absolutely love what you do, and keep shining.
The feeling is mutual. Thank you so much.